G'day, this is Expand the Phantom Podcast. We are a website, a podcast, and a way of life. You can find us at chroniclechamber.com. My name is Jermaine, and today I'm joined by Steve and Dan. How are you guys?
Doing well there, Joan. Yep. Geez, it seems like it only, not very long ago since we were here chatting all things Phantom, and now we're back here again. It's great. I think I was even wearing the same flanny.
I don't know how you do it, Steve. We're here sweltering in the middle of an Australian summer, probably December, near Christmas sometime, I imagine. And there you are in a flannelette shirt. So
because I live in Ballarat, mate.
No. Very good to be joining you guys for another Phantom chat.
For those who are wondering what we're talking about, every year we talk about let's be organised and record a few podcasts so we can actually have some time off, not recording in November, December and January. And I think for the first time in about 10 years, we've actually done it. And this is our second podcast back-to-back recorded. So, yeah, that's why Stephen... He does shower and wash his clothes in between podcasts. But for those eagle-eyed fans, that's why he's wearing the same clothes. So, look, it's a little bit more fun today. When we first announced the proposed TV show, Phantom TV show, on our website in July 2023, we spent a whole episode with Mikkel, Ankit, and Duncan, and the three of us, pitching ideas. For the record, none of us have been contacted yet about our ideas.
Not that I'm allowed legally to say.
That was in episode 256.
Actually, I missed the episode where you got to chat. I had to come in on the next episode to add mine in, I think. So Netflix, if you're looking at 256, you don't like those ideas, go to 257 and check out mine, and we'll be in contact.
You made mention of Netflix there. In the last month, there has been some more news that Netflix is likely going to be the platform to distribute the show. That's probably the best news out of it, because as of late 2024, Netflix had 300 plus million subscribers. The next best was Prime at 200 and Disney at 127. However, Dan, the old fart among us and the spoil sport, in episode 320, made mention of the Phantom having some false dawns prior with TV shows and films ever since Tom Tyler donned the uniform for the first time in 1943. So this podcast is going to be a collection of all those rumours, could have beens, failed attempts, and everything else that has happened in the last 70 years. It's going to be an interesting show. We will probably talk about some stuff that did not get past a producer or anything like that, but it is a rumor. It is something that fans out there have talked about, and so that is what we're going to do. Now, if we have missed something or one that you think deserves to be in here, please let us know. And so what we're going to do, we're going to go down a trip down memory lane. We're going to take in turns talking about things that happened decades and years ago. And hopefully you will enjoy this. And I reckon that we will discuss something that you haven't heard about before. And you can join us as we go what could have been. So, Steve, do you want to start us off with 1943?
So 1943, I'm sure many Phantom fans are aware of this one. It's the Tom Tyler serial, where instead of Mr. Walker, we've got Jeffrey Prescott as the Phantom, and we didn't have Devil the Bengalan Mountain Wolf. We've got Ace the Wonder Dog. I think he was a Alsatian or German Shepherd or something like that. I can't. How many episodes of this was there, Dan? Joan?
15, I believe.
15. And you've what? And I've got a tape of it. Oh, I should have got myself a bit more organised. There it is. I remember going into that shop in Geelong and picking up this on VHS. Oh, hang on, I've got myself on the blurred background. The Phantom serial, Columbia Pictures, I can read the thing, 1943, screen treatment of the Phantom was assured of success right from the start. And as it goes on, there's 15 episodes and what have you. It's definitely of its time.
Have you watched it? Have you watched it?
I haven't seen all 15 episodes, but I have watched a few of them. Yeah.
Have
you?
I've got
Have you watched it,
I've got
Dan?
the DVD. I've got the
Oh, you got the
DVD.
DVD.
I can't remember where I picked that up exactly. I could go back to my archives and find out. But yeah, 15 episodes of the serial. Total running time 240 minutes, so 4 hours of 1943 dodgy phantom goodness.
And it is pretty dodgy. Like, I don't think they're real natives. There's a little bit whitewashing was pretty much a thing back then.
Correct. Not a real wolf face. The Wonder Dog's a German Shepherd, and look, but it's fun of its time, and it's certainly worth a look. If you're a hardcore Phantom fan, you definitely need to have a look at some of this. It's available on YouTube, I think, and certainly we've got it in the P3 as well. So, yeah, it's certainly worth a look. Have you ever watched it, Joe?
I have. I watched it on my VHS tape back in the 90s. When it was advertised in the Free Comic, I watched it. I think there was one episode that was quite dodgy, like with the recording. But look, it's what I like about it is that at the end of each episode there was a cliffhanger. You know, what will happen to the Phantom next? Will he get swallowed up by the quicksand? And then in the next, in the first five seconds, Devil comes along and rescues him, or a snake falls down and he uses that to get out of the quicksand, or like there's all those but look, it is a time a product of its time, but look, it's worth digging out and watching. I really enjoyed that little tidbit that you gave us, Stephen, about the Jeffrey Prescott instead of Mr. Walker. I remember some fans get quite upset about that. Oh, why don't they use Mr. Walker? To be quite honest, that alias that was created by the ghostwriter for Lee Falk at that time, he hadn't actually created it yet. So Mr. Walker did not exist. So that's probably my favourite tidbit from that episode, from that whole film series.
And yeah,
All right,
like I said, every episode's a cliffhanger, and which is a trope of serials of the time. And then in the 1960s with the Batman TV show, same will he escape the giant birthday cake, whatever it is? Tune in next back day, next back week, next back channel, whatever it is. Yeah. Anyway, I butchered that.
I just got distracted by the idea of trying to escape a giant birthday cake.
I remember one.
That's obviously
Batman and Robin are in this giant birthday cake or wedding cake or something. It's just come to mind. I'm sure all the Bat fans out there know what I'm talking about.
Well, look, my understanding is that in the 1940s, it was actually a really popular serial because it was released obviously in cinemas. You didn't have TVs, and certainly didn't have DVDs at the time, and so you would go to the cinema and you'd watch this little 15-minute short Phantom, chapter ahead of the main movie. Probably after the news, you get the Phantom serial, and then you're there for the main event. So, and my understanding is it was really quite popular at the time, and certainly the film posters or the cards that were used to advertise it at the time are really highly collectible at the moment too. So I guess that leads us to the sequel that Columbia Pictures tried to produce to the Phantom, because obviously, while the 1943 serial had been successful, it was successful enough that they decided to release a serial to it. Now, interestingly, Columbia Pictures, who produced the 1943 the Phantom serial, probably just assumed that they still had the rights. Certainly the production team assumed they still had the rights to the Phantom when they just started filming it, but then they discovered that actually no, the rights had lapsed, and King Features did what King Features does and has always done, and was just weird to work with by the sounds of things. And they decided, no, we don't want the rights to go out again, and we're not happy with you producing another Phantom serial. So they had to stop. Well, no, they didn't stop. They continued to release and use the footage that they had created. So they pivoted, and instead of releasing the serial, which was going to be Return of the Phantom, it became The Adventures of Captain Africa. Probably made it a little bit easier because they had to change actor anyway. John Hart had stepped into the lead role because Tom Tyler had died. The Adventures of Captain Africa did come out. Funnily enough, they used some of the footage from the original Phantom serial, and which did include Tom Tyler in the Phantom uniform. So I'm not sure how they managed to dance around that legal aspect with King Features, but there we are. So Adventures of Captain Africa, I haven't seen that at all. I haven't been able to find it on DVD, so I've no idea how that turned out. Have either of you guys seen any of it?
No, I've missed that one.
Yeah, no, I haven't watched it either. I've seen some. I've seen some. Um, I've seen like bits and parts of it. I think Bradley Kelly, I think, has posted it up on his YouTube. For those interested who might want to look at that. I've seen some promotional photography of John Hart dressed up as the Phantom, and then in other promotional stuff, he's got like khaki pants on from the bottom with but the same top. So it's quite ingenious how they managed to just pivot so quickly. All right, so going from 1961, the next attempt was, which was another TV, was going to be another TV series. Now, what's interesting about this? It was actually created. King Features were actually involved with this from the beginning. So maybe they got sick and tired of being stuffed around with the previous two, and they thought, we can do this better. So it was first developed in 1956 with Roger Creed, who was actually a former stuntman. So I thought that was quite interesting that they got a stuntman to play the Phantom, which makes sense because there's going to be a lot of action sequences and stuff like that. The pilot never aired, and it wasn't actually aired until a few decades later. It was actually leaked onto the internet, which is quite interesting. Where was it? Actress Marlon Manning was going to be Diana, but she never appeared in the first pilot either. Now, have any of you guys seen this?
No.
No, until today, I didn't know it had existed.
Yeah. Well, so it's probably worth making mention that where we can dig up footage, we will be overlaying that over us talking as well. So while you're listening to us right now, you can probably see parts of Roger Creed playing the Phantom.
Who was Roger Creed? Was he famous for anything else?
I don't know, to be honest.
I've just done a quick thing on Wikipedia, and you know how they highlight the names and you can hyperlink them. Rogers isn't. From 1961, we go to 1966 and move over to the Philippines. Now, there's not much on this one, but we got Elias was a producer. Bob Solar played the Phantom. It is in Filipino and Tagalog local languages. And looking on IMDb, there is not much. The director was Paquito Toledo, but that's about it. It doesn't give us anything about what the storyline was. Just that it was released in January 11, 1966. So you know all things Phantom. Jerm, you would have seen this a few times then? Yeah, you like your international Phantom?
I don't think I'll be very surprised if footage actually exists anywhere. But what's interesting is that in the 60s and 70s, after the Americans regained control of the Philippines, there was a real American influence where it happened with their food. Like they got introduced to processed cheese, which is everywhere in their cuisine. But also comic characters and comics and stuff like that. And then from that, a lot of people became artists from the Philippines as well. And so there was a real influence in that. And it's interesting. I started watching a documentary about how the American influenced the Filipino culture, and the Phantom was actually mentioned as one of the comic characters that actually was probably received better, a lot like Papua New Guinea and Fiji as well. Most likely because the jungle location was very similar to what they were experiencing. So it's, you know, we're not going to go into too deep here, but it's interesting how that happened.
Rightio. Well, just before we get to Dan, I want to put up the next one because we had a bit of an argument before recording, and I wanted to make sure I was right. And I'm right and I was wrong because I had this memory that the Phantom appeared in Yellow Submarine, the Beatles song. I was wrong. It's not in the music video of Yellow Submarine. If you check out YouTube, he's not there. But he's actually in the movie of Yellow Submarine, where it's like a cardboard cutout and a couple of the characters are walking through. Mandrake's also in that scene. So he's not moving, he's not saying anything, not doing anything, but he is just there in the movie Yellow Submarine, released in 1968, starring an animated form of the Beatles.
Now, I will admit, so the argument is I didn't actually include it in here because I didn't think it deserved a mention. Steve was adamant that it does deserve a mention, so that's why it's here. But yeah.
Well, it's not a long mention, so maybe we don't spend long over it. But I think it's valid having it in the pod. It's an appearance by the Phantom, and possibly the most eyeballs of any of these things that we're going to talk about today.
Quite possibly. Okay, so in the 1970s, there was 3 Turkey movies. So again, with the American influence, which we talked about the Philippines, it also happened in Turkey. Turkey's tried to become a little bit more westernized, which meant accepting of American culture, which meant comics were allowed to be published. We're not going to go too deep into the pros and the cons of that. That's for another podcast. But because of that, there was actually 3 Turkey movies featuring the Phantom. It was played by Ismet, Erten, and Irfan Atasoy. Now, these movies, I've watched 2 of them. The best way to describe it is, the old, on Sunday afternoons when you're growing up, you see the old cowboy movies, which are just full of beautiful women, cowboys fighting each other, lots of fighting scenes and people flying over tables and chairs and stuff like that. That type of stuff that we all watched.
Mm-hmm.
That's what these Turkish movies are like. They are interesting. They're very flamboyant, but they're also very risque. Like there was one scene where the Phantom climbs through the bathroom or Diana has a shower and then the curtain draws over him and then we'll let the rest to the imagination. The other interesting part about it is that on the costume for one of the Phantom, they actually had a skull and crossbones on the chest. Now, what's actually interesting is that this is not the first time that the Phantom has actually appeared with a skull and crossbones on the chest. And it also happened around the same time in the 70s in Indonesia on some of their comics as well. So, look, I've got some old VCD versions of these. They're interesting, but yeah, look, they are what they are. They're a product of their time. They'll never win an Oscar award, but they were quite enjoyable in some aspects of them.
Oh, very good. Well, we'll have to see if we can track down copies to share with people. Always
Not the bathroom scene.
Hi.
Not the bathroom scene.
Okay. All right. Well, look, I'll take the next one. And so in 1972, there was a movie or a 1-hour TV special, I suppose, that was released. As I said, 1972. It was called The Man Who Hated Laughter, or actually its full name was Popeye Meets the Man Who Hated Laughter. And it's completely unique in the sense that this is a film that actually united all of the characters, or almost all of the characters that were owned by King Features Syndicate. It was shown in America on October 7th in 1972 and then was aired again in February of 74. So As I said, almost every comic strip character owned by King Features. It's a full list, and some, I guess, of the more well-known characters. Obviously, Popeye I mentioned. I'm now reading the list from the IMDb page. Blondie, Beetle Bailey, Flash Gordon, the Cats and Jammer Kids, Mandrake the Magician, Phantom, as I said, Prince Valiant had a cameo, and they're probably all the ones that I've really heard of before, but there's a full-on list. And as an hour-long special, basically, it's it's an opportunity for all of these characters to come together and fight against a common enemy. Now, I haven't actually seen it, but the more I read about it, the more I want to. Have you guys seen this one?
Yeah, I've seen it. I've even got a colouring in book from this.
Okay. And is it worth a watch?
Probably not by the sounds of that.
For completeness' sake, but we'll show some of it while we're talking.
Yeah, I think I've seen snippets, but that's about it for me.
All right. Well, worth maybe tracking down and maybe just highlighting the Phantom scenes by the sounds of things there. It does say here that they all sail away on an adventure on a boat called the SS Hilarious, which I don't know what that says about the quality of the film. But anyway. All right, I'm going to go on to 1973, and this is a short film called Fanta, Fanta, spelt like the drink, I suppose. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about this one is because I came to know it through meeting the guy who produced it, Peter Kingston, the famous Sydney artist, and I came to know him through the Phantom Art Show as it was going around. And in most of the galleries where they had the Phantom Art Show, there was a TV that had just had this Fanta 1973 short film on repeat. So it was a film that Peter had created himself with basically his mates. It was set around the Sydney ferries. It's only about 14 minutes long, but it basically tells the story of a man who's obsessed with Phantom comics and through comics make an appearance. He fantasizes himself as being a modern day Phantom after he reads through a comic that he's bought on his way onto the ferry, and he daydreams himself into a Phantom adventure. And it's about 10 minutes then of high octane action with damsels in distress and this guy saving the day as the Phantom. So he wakes up as the ferry arrives at its destination and gets off, but then you see the closing scene which shows the Phantom himself dressed as Kit Walker getting off the ferry. So he was there all along. So 14 minutes, absolutely worth watching. Bit of fun, fan-made Phantom stories.
I guess what's interesting is with things like this and some of these other ones is that there's definitely some interest in the Phantom, and I think as we even go further, you'll see it even more. But there's just like one bad luck story after another, and it's very interesting.
Well, I don't know anyone who knows anything about the Ruby Spears animated series, so I guess, Jim, that's probably you.
Yeah,
so there was a Chronicle Chamber article. I was just reading that.
Yeah. So this was actually something that we actually originally investigated and broke on the website. So there's two. Did you want to talk about one of them, Steve? Or
no, you go right ahead, mate.
Okay, so look, again, we will include links on our website and we'll include pictures and stuff like that where we can. But a guy called Mark Evener in the late 70s spent 2-3 years actually working on scripts. Now, I believe he actually has copies of these scripts and they're actually also in the Ruby Spears warehouse. So Ruby Spears is the animation studio. They actually tried twice to get this off the ground. And on the second attempt of getting it off the ground, they actually hired Jack Kirby, yes, the famous artist from Marvel, to create a presentation board for the second attempt. By this time, I believe in an email that I've seen from Mark, who was talking about this at the time, that he was actually not involved with it at that time because he had already created the scripts. So the scripts were kind of, he spent the 2-3 years writing them. The scripts were sitting there. And then when Ruby Spears thought, let's give this one more time, then basically they got Jack Kirby. An interesting tidbit about this is that Mark was actually also contracted to work on the DC series in the late 80s. But in typical fashion, there was actually 2 writers that were hired to write the series. And the other one, of course, was Mark Verheiden, who has been on the podcast, and you can talk about, and you can listen to him talking about that series. But they went with Mark instead of Mark.
That's not confusing.
Yeah, this is a true case of what if. I think this is around where we're getting into the cases of, as you'll see probably for the next 10, 20 years, of what could have happened, and what could have happened if this happened, and stuff like that. So, Steve, did you want to talk about the Filmation TV show in the early 80s?
So apparently it started off with a Flash Gordon TV show, but never really got off the proposal stage. Once again, cartoon art was created. It sounds like, from what I'm just having a look here, very much along the same lines as what you've just been talking about. It got a start, but that's about it.
Yeah. It's a real case of what if, what could have been, if things, because like they had the rights for Flash Gordon, and they're like, well, we've got the rights for Flash Gordon, let's do the Phantom as well, and just died.
Yeah, but it died, but not too long after, the Phantom rose again with a few mates, and we had from 1986 to 1987, Defenders of the Earth took over Saturday mornings or whatever time it came on, with 65 glorious episodes of Defenders of the Earth and a 4-series tie-in comic book, and then it's something that's lived on in our hearts ever since. It's lived in my heart. I'm sure it's lived in yours too as well, fellas. So Peter Mark Richmond voiced the Phantom. Rick Gordon was originally going to be Kit Walker, the son of the Phantom, but as we know, he became son of Flash, and Jetta became the daughter of the Phantom, which is a bit of a twist or a different path than what we're used to see in Phantom stories. Now we do have a podcast with Rick Hoberg, who was the art director. I think that was in episode 154. Would that be about right, Jerm?
It's a pretty good guess, mate.
Pretty good guess. It is only this cartoon series that the Phantom has a superhero ability. We all remember he calls on the strength of 10 tigers, and the tiger symbol flashes, and he's got super strength.
Did anyone ever count how many tigers appeared?
I was about to say 10 tigers appeared, but then I realised I'd be telling a Furphy, because I'd assume there was 10 tigers. In the series, the Phantom also used a special helicopter nicknamed the Skullcopter, and had an updated skull ring that would shoot a laser onto the faces of. Well, it did in the. I remember that happening in the title sequence. It lands on Ming's hand, and apart from the episode where that comes in, I don't remember that happening throughout the series. But I'm more than happy to be wrong, and would mark them for life, of course. And you can still see the series today. You can watch it on Comics Kingdom YouTube channel.
Yeah, I think a lot of us of our vintage will have a special place for the Defenders of the Earth, because that was, for me, that was the Phantom, which I loved reading the comic books, suddenly appearing on the screen. And I wasn't a massive fan of Defenders of the Earth, and I wasn't a massive fan of the superhero and the magic, all that sort of stuff. But I was a massive fan, and well on the record of the fact that we got toys out of it, and we could have Phantom toys to play with as much as anything else.
And And the 80s was such a rich period of time for animation as well. We've all, the 80s and the early 90s. I'm sure we've all got stories of watching Saturday morning cartoons and stuff like that as well. And I think they did a really good job. If Steve, you made mention of the podcast with Rick Hoberg. If there are fans out there that love this series, make sure you hunt down that podcast, because that podcast is one of the best podcasts we've ever done.
Yeah, and the series, I think it stands well along with other cartoon series of the time. Like that was a time of Transformers, of GI Joe, of what else was around back then? Voltron, absolutely. So these are things that were all around the same time. Astro Boy maybe as well, and people still talk fondly of it today.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to get to another animated series that probably most people are familiar with, but in the meantime, if we can stick to strict chronological fashion, there almost was a Swedish Phantom film come out as well, the Svenska films. Now, the notes here is this you, Germ, recently found a letter from the producer?
No, look, there was someone who was going through the Egmont archives recently. And he recently found a letter. It's very fascinating.
Right. Well, I'd love to read it, because basically it's from the guy who would become the producer of the 1996. Oh, sorry, a guy who was tied to what became the 1996 movie. So here we are, 8 years previous to that. And talking about a different writer, a different production team, but talking about the movie that was potentially in the works. Svenska Films were somehow going to be involved. Look, this is almost certainly nothing. It might be something, but it's if we're true to the near misses concept of this particular podcast, this would seem to be a time where maybe a film nearly came out in the late 80s. Rather than the late 90s, mid to late 90s, and might have just about beaten the original Batman film, and once again trumped that character. But it was a near miss. It didn't happen.
Yeah, and that's the beauty about this podcast, is that we're talking about little rumors, and we're spending the last 5 minutes talking about a letter that has been photocopied and shoved in a file and probably never seen the light of day for 20 years, and some nerd found it, and it's like, and now three nerds are talking about this random letter that's been found. And I think that's the exciting part of doing this podcast, is finding out just how close we were to some of these.
Well, I mentioned the thing that did happen, and that was the other animated thing that most people would probably remember who are listening to this, and that's the Phantom 2040 series that came out in 1994. Now, this was a series that followed the 23rd Phantom. I thought it was the 24th Phantom. So it's a future Phantom set in the future, set in 2040, which ironically is not that far away now as we record. So there's a bit to happen. Where's my hoverboard? All that sort of stuff. That needs to happen to get to the world that Phantom 2040 envisaged. So voice actor was Scott Valentine. He voiced the Phantom. The art director for this one was Tom Schillinger. Now, again, we have been fortunate enough to have a podcast record with Tom back in episode 173, so go and check that one out. And Phantom 2040, the legacy of Phantom 2040 continues, because, just recently, in the last 2 months, we've seen a web comic series, comic book series on Comics Kingdom, that follows that seems to follow on from 2040. So you can check that out on the Comics Kingdom website, and also their YouTube channel has got the archive of the Phantom 24 TV series.
This TV show it's the style of animation is very different to, say, like Defenders of the Earth. It's got that Eon Flux type of look. There's that French influence. It's got a real cult following. I feel like because of the technology side, a lot of fans are a little bit more wary of it. But I think as you watch it, you realize just how true it was to a lot of Phantom lore. It's very well done. It's yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Hmm.
And once again, there was more products that came along with that. There was even video games with this one.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So we all know 1996. It's the Phantom, Slam Evil, Billy Zane, as the Phantom, as Kid Walker, Buffy. What's her name?
Christy Swanson.
Yeah, Christy Swanson was Diana. And we talked about in our last episode when we were talking about different pulp heroes, and Catherine Zeta-Jones got a mention in Zorro. Catherine Zeta-Jones was in this film as well, so it was loaded with a few stars in the film. Unfortunately, it didn't go too well at the box office on its first release, but really found life on home media, on VHS, and later on DVD. Now there were 2 sequels planned, but it didn't. They didn't eventuate. Now, just like the movies and TV shows beforehand, there were heaps of problems. Like, they started writing the movie back in the 80s, and it didn't see the light of day until 1996. It was filmed in a number of locations, and definitely here in Australia. I think is it Brisbane Town Hall where it was stood in for the museum? Would that be about right?
Yeah.
Sammy J did something there as
City
well.
Hall, I think, is the name of it. But yes, in the Brisbane CBD.
Yeah. And though it may have been panned, and we've talked about it, and we talk about the supernatural elements and parts that we don't like, but really, it's our hero. He's up on the big screen, and I do enjoy it.
So this movie, like you made mention, it was you look at the Phantom Club newsletters and stuff like that, which were out in the 1980s. They were talking about the Phantom movie then. Jim Shepard talked about the Phantom movie from the 1980s in the message from the publisher. You had writers like Chris Sherlock writing it, and then Jeffrey Boehm write it. So there's so many different iterations. So this movie, so many times, almost didn't happen, and so it's when you look at how many versions, how many different scripts, and how many different actors were going to play it, it's almost a miracle that it actually happened.
Well, certainly, it seemed to take a long time to get off the ground, and it's nearly 30 years ago, and we haven't seen a second Phantom film. So yes, we need to embrace it and appreciate that it happened.
Yeah. So the next one is actually a TV series that happened in 1997 to 1998. Now, a lot of fans are going, "Hey, it wasn't a TV series of the Phantom in 1997 to 1998." Well, there was. It was actually in India, and it was called Batel Bashi, or just Batel. Now, it's based on the TV script. Now, I actually haven't seen any TV footage of this. I've seen some imagery, and it's a guy wearing a red costume. He's got yellow and black stripes on the arms and on the jocks, which look like the caution tape from a mine site. And then around his neck, he's wearing a necklace which, for the lack of better term, looks like a swastika symbol from World War II. But it's not. But there was 49 episodes, but I think what I love about this the most is that King Features actually went to court over them with this and tried to close it down and try to sue them. But in true Phantom fashion, or fighting against the oppressors and the evil mongers, they actually won, which was good to hear. And I've been sent transcripts of all the court proceedings and stuff like that by Swo's friend of the podcast and the website. And they said, I think the ruling was that the only expression of an idea could be protected, not the idea itself, and that's the reason why this TV series was allowed to happen. Now I want to try and hunt down some footage and include it while we're talking, but I haven't been able to find anything yet, so there's no promises. The person who played the Phantom, or Betel, is called, again, I apologize for butchering the name, but it's Shahbaz Khan.
And I've just had a look at the image, a photo of him. He's on Wikipedia. And I want to have a look at the necklace around his neck, and yeah, it's the Hindu symbol of the swastika, which means good fortune before it was bastardized by the Nazis.
Yeah.
So it is actually a sacred symbol, and so according to this TV show, the Phantom's a Hindu.
Yes, and Mandrake did appear in this as well, and I think, you know, without getting sidetracked too much, we've talked about this Indian one. We've got to talk about another couple of Indian iterations in a second. We've got Turkey, we've got the Philippines, we've got the US, we had Australia, talked about what might have happened over in Sweden. And this follows on with what Kevin Patrick did in his book, but we've talked about so many times, is these countries see the Phantom as their own. And I think this is what a perfect example is, that you know, they don't see the Phantom as you know, as an American creation. They see it as an Indian beloved character, that it's Indian. A lot of Australians see it as an Australian character, and the same as the Swedes and the Norwegians and stuff like that as well.
Well, absolutely true. And I guess speaking of that, there was an opportunity, it would seem, in the late 1990s for Australia to take some ownership of an animated TV series. Now, there's very little information on this. It's one of those, you know, near misses. Could it have happened? Did it even come close? But if you ever get an opportunity to talk to Glenn Ford, perhaps if you meet him at a supernova, or are lucky enough to have a bit of a chat to Glenn, maybe ask him about the storyboards that he worked on for a potential animated TV series that was going to be created out of Brisbane in Australia. Apparently each episode was going to be an episode on a past Phantom, and the stories were going to interlink and tie together. But, you know, never really got past the storyboard stage by the sounds of things, and who knows whether that was a licensing arrangement or what was going on. It's a shame, because the late 1990s, on the back of the film, it would have been a really good way for something to take off, but again, one of those ones that sadly didn't get off the ground.
There's going to be a few of those for the next, I think all of our next mentions are all these could have been, would have beens, maybes.
Well, let's go. Do you want me to take the next one then, Steve, as well?
Yeah, go for it.
I am really just reading the notes off the page here, because it's not something I'd ever heard of before we sat down to do this one. But apparently in the early 2000s, 2002, 2003, there was something called Hyde Park and Crusader, which was, is that a British creation?
Production company.
Yeah.
So,
No, you go, Jerm.
no, you go read the notes.
So a script written by Stephen D'Souza, and the was going to get produced by a company called Hyde Park Entertainment. The chairman, the CEO of Hyde Park Entertainment, was Ashok Amritaj Raj. Oh, I'm no good at Indian names. No better than Jerm was. So anyway, he, as a kid, had read The Phantom in India, and so was excited and wanted to get it off the ground. It didn't go anywhere. An interesting side note for Australians might be that Heath Ledger, who Australian listeners will know very, very well, international listeners, Heath was the Joker in Batman Forever. Have I got that one right? Certainly
Not
the Dark Knight.
Dark Knight, sorry, yes. So Heath Ledger was the Joker there, and he was someone who was mentioned as possibly being a good fit to be cast as the Phantom, which is, I reckon he might just have been too. Anyway, another one of that did not happen.
He's a good perf lad as well, Heath Ledger. I think my wife actually did some work for their perf business as well.
There you go.
So yeah, so look, what's interesting about this one is got pretty close. Now, I remember on the Phantom Forum days. Now, back in around that time, that's all we had. It was back in the Messenger uh, internet forums. We had one called a Phantom Forum with a PH, of course. That was attached to the Deepwoods website. Deepwoods did an article with Stephen D'Souza. I reckon we might even see if we can, yeah. So hunt that down. We'll have a link to it in our show notes. We'll have a link to all of these things. But he talks a lot about this movie, about what is written, about the Phantom movie, and stuff like that as well. So a good near
And
miss.
yeah, and it says that he was going to make it more contemporary rather than the retro feel of the
Yeah.
1996 movie. Going to bring it in today's world.
Yeah, and that would absolutely have been very interesting. Speaking of the 1996 movie, I guess you mentioned there before, Steve, that there were a couple of sequels slated for that. And it's around that 2005, 2008 time period where they were really trying to see if that might happen. Billy Zane, Kirsty Swanson, Catherine Zeta-Jones apparently all had contracts or were slated to return for that, but just didn't get off the ground, unfortunately. I guess can we confirm that became something called the 2010 Legacy movie?
From what I understand is that yes, so they got the rights, they were going to do the sequel, and then for whatever reason, don't know, it just didn't happen, and then it kind of pivoted, and then it became the Phantom Legacy movie, which has got the director of Tim Boyle, which we've done a podcast in 176. So we're going to kind of break the chronological order a little bit there. Even though my OCD is probably and my type A personality is having a fit right now, but I think it does make sense. Look, this is probably the closest we've been since the 1996 movie. So we had a director, Tim Boyle. We had a script. The three of us have read the script. I'm not sure if you remember the script.
Yep.
It opened up with the 21st Phantom dying by General Babubu. If you are on our Phantom Preservation Project, you can read a copy of this script. Chris Hemsworth auditioned for the role twice, so they never casted it, but he was the favorite to be able to do it. Now, it's rumored that Sam Worthington was going to be the Phantom, but we actually asked Tim this on our podcast, and he said no. Now, Sam Worthington was the rumor because he worked with Tim Boyle on a past on a past movie that they worked together, and Sam Worthington would have looked good as the Phantom. He was, for those who don't know, he played in Avatar, and he's quite a big, bulky type of guy, so he would have been good.
He's too short, I think. It was one of the things that Tim said. Too short.
But Chris Hemsworth actually auditioned for the role twice, so he could have actually played a superhero before his probably more famous brother. I would recommend watching and listening to episode 176. I think the thing that's exciting about this is that it was going to become a mini-series of movies. Before Marvel did their Marvel universe, there was the potential for a King Features universe. Do you guys remember this conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was an exciting idea to think that we might have, I think it was planned as one Phantom movie, then a Phantom sequel, but then there was going to be a Mandrake and a Flash Gordon, and then all of them come together for a Defenders of the Earth type team up as your 4 or 5 movie series arc. That would have been super exciting. Maybe the project was too big at the time to consider. As you said, it was before Marvel particularly went into their, God, how many movies have they got in their multiverse now? But yeah, maybe it was an idea ahead of its time.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was an idea before its time. What's even, I think the amazing thing about this, what could have been, is the amazing reason for the reason why this movie stopped, and that was because the USA invaded Libya. Now, people are going, how on earth does a USA invasion of Libya stop a movie? Well, what had happened was there was a group that was going to fund this movie. There was some distant relative of the dictator of Libya who had their funds, some of their money in this fund. And when USA invaded them, they froze all of their funds, which meant that this entity had all their funds frozen, and so they couldn't fund this movie. So we have the Yanks to blame for the reason why this movie never got made. Why we never got a Defenders of the Earth movie, a Mandrake movie, a Flash movie, and 2 Phantom movies was because the Americans invaded Libya.
Yeah, can't speak for all of it, but we can speak for at least for the first Phantom movie. Now, to try and get Jermaine's OCD back online, we're going to go backwards, or it's probably just going to start making his eyes twitch. So that was 2010. If we go back to 2009, it was the sci-fi Phantom series, and this was it got as far as a 2-episode pilot, if I recall correctly. Ryan Carnes was the actor, young bloke. He was playing the 22nd Phantom in an updated costume because he took one look at the old school costume and said, no, thank you. Then we all saw the new costume and we all said, no, thank you. Now, we have spoken with Ryan. When did we speak with Ryan?
It was via a private message on Instagram. We wished him a happy birthday and he replied to us, and so we got talking.
Oh, that was nice of him. He was contracted for a year, and in the middle of filming the pilot, a new guy came in and canned anything that wasn't his. What do you mean?
Like the new CEO, head honcho guy of Sci-Fi. So, so Sci-Fi was the people that owned it. That's when they changed from SIFI to SYFY. And then, typically what happens is when a new guy comes into the studio, he gets rid of all of these predecessors' ideas, and that's basically what happened. And as what Ryan said, that he had an exclusive contract that he was not able to work on anything else but this Phantom series for a whole year. So he got paid for a year to do nothing.
Yeah, right.
Now, you guys have seen this, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, what did you guys think of it?
Once it's one of those things. I think once the Phantom fan, the diehard focused in me, didn't like it initially, but once you can move past like the costume being different and just embrace the concept, I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah, very well said. I think I'm pretty much would agree with what you said.
A point of note, I think, is you mentioned Ryan Kahn being there. Isabella Rossellini is probably the far more famous actor who was involved. She played a doctor in the 2 episodes. Very much. Well, she used to be married to Martin Scorsese, so there's only 3 degrees of separation then between Martin Scorsese and Lee Falk, if you want to look at it that way. It had obviously some big names attached to it, but irrespective for whatever reason, couldn't get past the 2 episodes.
Did like how they had the updated version of the Jungle Patrol as well.
Yes.
So there was a lot of elements in there that was, look, I don't want to use the word true to Phantom lore because, but there was a lot of Phantom elements in there. It was an almost. Like the fact that they contracted him for a full year, and they filmed it. I remember seeing, and I think even the costume, I think once you go past the bike helmet of the cow, everything else kind of worked and made sense. But that bike helmet element just was a bit of a miss.
Maybe maybe that's sort of diverging a little bit here, but maybe the preparedness to understand a different costume has been addressed a little bit more recently, especially when you look at that Fru poster that Jeff Weigel produced, looking at how the Phantom's costumes might have changed over time. Probably in 2009, a lot of us were still stuck, certainly I would have been, still stuck in the idea, no, the Phantom costume was exactly the same from 1535 right through to present day, no changes, exactly identical. But if you start to think, well, hang on, how might it look if you were to design a Phantom costume in those colours and that basic scheme, how might it look appropriate for its time? And if you take that lens, maybe the sci-fi Phantom's not so far from the mark. This one, we've got a potential Phantom movie in 2014, and this story, for me, as much as anything, highlights the skepticism that I have that you highlight that you mentioned at the start of the pod, Germ. So in 2014, there was an article come out on movieweb.com, and it was by the esteemed Brian Gallagher. I don't know who Brian Gallagher is, but this is an internet article that reports that there is a producer, Mark Gordon, who is tied to a new adaptation of The Phantom. And it's a really well-written piece that talks about it talks about the 1996 version of The Phantom. It talks about how the Phantom Legacy didn't quite happen in 2010. And are you excited to see a new version of The Phantom? And of course we all would have been. But other than this one article that sort of alludes to the fact that maybe this producer might be tied to something, nothing happened. And I guess, as much as anything.
Yeah. What's even more amazing about that is in that whole article, it is one line, and then down the bottom, 2 lines. So you're literally looking at 3 sentences in that whole article that is actually about this possible TV movie.
Yep. And all it is someone else is suggesting that maybe there's a rumor. So, that they tied a name to it. It tied Mark Gordon as producer. It tied Drew Simon as an executive producer. But that's only because he's the producer for the Mark Gordon company. And it says that they might be looking for a screenwriter. Is it a near miss? Who's to say? Did it ever even happen? Was this someone overheard Mark Gordon and Drew Simon talking in a coffee club saying, a Phantom movie might be nice, and went with it from there? Who knows? But we talk about near misses, but this is why when you talk about skepticism, I need to see a little bit more than just maybe someone's name is tied to a project.
And your skepticism birthed this podcast. Okay, so moving to 2018, we have the Cholman how do you say that?
Ashori
film, which I must admit I really enjoyed this. This was an Indian fan creation. You can watch the video for free on their website, on YouTube. Sorry. Again, this is what we talked about before. It is some Indian fans who read the comic, loved the comic, who see the Phantom as Indian, and they thought, well, we've got the means, we've got the ability, we've got the funds to be able to do it, and they've done it. And I thought they did a really good job. It's something that you could picture actually happening in this place where, and I thought they did a really good job. I really enjoyed the podcast that we did with that we did with the writer and the director and the actor who played the Phantom. That was in episode 94. That was really enjoyable. So this was really good.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one too, and it was almost a mini golden age, if you like, for potential Phantom stuff, because around the same time was when Kid Phantom Homework came out. Now that was a student created animation from one of the students or a team of students in Paul Mason's animation and classes at Griffith University in Queensland. A bit like the Kid Phantom comic books, unfortunately. That was, I think, what did we get, 9, 10 Kid Phantom books? And that was the end of that. The Kid Phantom homework only was only one episode, but it was a fun little 5 minutes of Phantom footage, and it's a shame. Well, it just shows what could have happened if more effort had been put into Kid Phantom.
Yeah, I think in 10 years' time, this has got nothing to do with the film, but I think in 10 years' time, we will be talking about what could have been with Kid Phantom and how it was a massive mistake by Frew to cancel it when we are whinging and moaning about how there's no new fans reading the comic.
Yeah, quite possibly. Quite possibly.
Okay, so we're almost up to current day. I remember this news when it came out that the Phantom was going to go Bollywood. And in 2019, there was Ronnie Screwvala and Vasan Bala involved who were going to bring the Phantom to Bollywood. Now, I was looking forward to this. I was really looking forward to this. We had a guy who was going to play the Phantom, and that was Kartik Aaryan. But he apparently pulled out due to what's the nice way of putting it? Due to differences between
Creative differences.
Creative differences. That's a good way of doing it. But what was interesting about this is like the Cholomon movie, and I actually wonder if they saw what happened with Cholomon and then they thought, oh, we can do this. I actually think that's where this came from. It was going to be Indian. It was going to be an origin setting in India. The Phantom was going to be Indian. And of course, it does sound very familiar as the Cholomon film.
So, but still never happened?
Still never happened. Again, never happened.
You would think that with the rich history of Bollywood films, the rich history of the Phantom in India, and proven in the TV series from the late 1990s, the Indian preparedness to go up against the licensing arrangements of King Features. It's a bit of a surprise we haven't had a Phantom Bollywood film.
You know, and I know not every Bollywood film is a musical, but surely a Phantom musical could have happened.
That would be entertaining to see. All right. Well, along the similar lines to the Cholomon Ashiri, there's a Brazilian fan-made film. Now, that's only come out this year in 2025. Episode 1 is there. Apparently, there's going to be an episode 2 later this year or early next. So that'll be interesting to see. That's available on YouTube as well, I think.
Yes.
So hopefully, like all of these things, we may well be able to add the links to the notes, and people can go and have a look at that, or you're showing it over the top of this as we're talking. I haven't, to be honest, I haven't actually seen this one. Have you watched much of it, Joe?
Yeah, I watched some of the behind the scenes. What's actually I've talked to both the editor, film guy, and then the guy who actually plays the Phantom. What's actually interesting is just a little quirk is the person who played Diana. They actually used to go out, so there's actually some chemistry there because they have actually had a relationship, so you can actually see that chemistry in the movie. Look, it's there's a lot of blue screen. There's it's fan made. I don't think it's quite in the same level as the Cholomon one in the quality, but it's fun. I like to see fans doing the stuff and getting out there and actually creating it, because I think when you create it, fans see it, they create a bit of a buzz, and then what happens, what I suggested happen with these the Bollywood guys, is they go, well, if these guys can do it, we can do it. So I think we need to see more of these fan created stuff, and we get behind these fans who are creating it and stuff like that, because I think it can help build that snowball, that snowball effect, build that momentum.
Yep, and look, I guess in terms of if we consider copyright and all the rest of it, we're only 6 years away from big chunks of the Phantom universe becoming open slather, open source.
Yeah,
So,
maybe we're going to get a slasher horror film of along the lines of Matt Kime's story. Maybe Matt Kime's story is going to be the first version of um. Before we move on from the Brazil one, there was this funny clip, and I'll include it as we're talking. But the guy who played the Phantom actually went to a nightclub um, in his Phantom costume. And so I've seen this footage of him dancing, getting down, and he's got his toy guns and he's whipping out the guns and he's getting down, dancing as the Phantom. It's quite funny.
well, the Brazilians have a history of being a little sacrilegious with their Phantom. I don't know if you've seen the Brazilian Playboy featuring the Phantom, but yeah, they don't mind playing around with the concept.
Hmm. So all of that leads us to the Netflix rumor, Netflix TV show, potential, whatever words you want to use. But King Features back in 2023, quietly, it must be said, announced on their website that they have got writers and a group behind a new TV show. Now, it took two years for them to get the next bit out, which is that it is potentially going to be Netflix. Now, nothing else, whether we know whether it's animated or real life or anything like that, has been announced. Some of the rumors that I have heard, now it is all rumors, besides the Netflix, is that it's going to be real life and that there has been scripts that have been written. But I don't believe that it has been anything's been filmed or someone's been casted as the Phantom or anything like that yet. When we know something, we will let you know. But at the moment, it's all rumors, and Dan is very skeptical, and that's the reason why we created this podcast.
I might be skeptical, but I'm sitting here with my fingers crossed because I absolutely want it to happen. I would love nothing more than to see this eventuate. It has my full support, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Yeah, and I think Netflix is probably the best thing we can aim for because, like I said, there's 300 million users on Netflix, and I've seen some very poor Netflix shows and movies. So if that stuff can get made and be put onto this platform, surely the Phantom can.
Well, let's hope. Let's hope that they're behind it, and the reason why it's taking so long is because it's going to be a really good quality product, and they're putting lots of work and effort into it. So whoever they might be, I wish them all the very best of luck. And again, if you're stuck for ideas, we did record a podcast with a whole bunch of ideas, and I'm sure that any of those would be quite useful. So
Yes. Now, this podcast was a bit of a labour of love. We must give a huge shout out to Suaz Aber and Andreas Eriksson, who helped us with some of this research, filled in some gaps where we had forgotten something, and nutted out some of these finer details which we've talked about. So huge thanks to those guys. Dan, Steve, thank you for joining us.
yeah, thanks very much, Jim. I really enjoyed it, and happy Netflixing, perhaps.
Very good. So thank you, listeners, for listening and or watching us. Like we said, if you do watch us, we will include what we can, images, video, and all of that type of stuff overlaying, so you can get out your popcorn and see some of the downright terrible adaptations as well as some of the good ones as well. Our website is chroniclechamber.com. If this interests, we would love to hear your thoughts, your feedback and opinions on what we've discussed. If we've missed anything, let us know as well. We've got our social media platforms. We've also got our YouTube channel as well, where you can give us feedback. As we said, we're on YouTube or various other podcast apps like iTunes or Spotify. Thank you. Please get in contact with us. And as always, happy Phantom.
Happy Phantoming.
Man cannot die. but you won't mind the phantom. He finds